Today on BookWatch, we're watching Project Hail Mary by Andrew Weir. The book published in 2021 and its recent 2026 adaptation of the same name, directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. The film is adapted by Drew Goddard, and the audiobook was narrated by Ray Porter. I'm Chris.
I'm Sarah Day.
And I'm Jordan.
And our returning special guest is J Scotty St. Clair. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me back once again. I must have done something right the last time.
All right, so introducing to the film here. You guys, any of you have any history you want to discuss about this? When did you read this? I just picked it up more recently. I'd read The Martian before, but I was hooked as soon as I picked it up. I started reading it, and I needed to read something else for the podcast here. But I was like, I got to finish this book. I got to get through this. It's just too good. Any of you guys got any interesting stories?
I was definitely intrigued by it when I first heard about it. I mean, obviously Ryan Gosling already right there. I want to watch it. But seeing that he wrote The Martian, I haven't read the book, but I have seen the movie, and I heard that the science was really accurate, which is really fascinating to have a science accurate film in Hollywood. So already I was really interested in this. I went into it blind. I had no idea except for what I had seen from the previews, and was completely blown away by the audiobook. Ray Porter did a fantastic job, and the story itself, so heartwarming. And then, of course, the movie. I mean, Ryan Gosling and Rocky's voice actor just melt your heart.
Definitely.
Yeah, this movie had a lot going for it in terms of everything you're talking about there, Sarah Day, with just Ryan Gosling being attached. That's enough to get me interested right out of the gate. He's one of my favorite actors working, always has been. Can't think of a single performance he's turned in that I haven't enjoyed on some level. So you've got that. You've got the Phil Lord and Chris Miller aspect of it as well. This movie just had a lot going for it. So I actually had kind of a unique experience. Another podcast that I appear on, Multiverse News, plug. I'll try not to do that too much, though. We were obviously talking about the marketing, the trailers, and I remember we did an episode kind of doing a preview for 2026 where we all got to talk about the films that we were the most excited for. And I was kind of taken, even though I had enjoyed the trailers and was looking forward to this movie, all three of my co-hosts had it on their lists. And I was like, okay, what did I miss? So I had to go back and watch the trailer again. And as they just continued to talk, a couple of my co-hosts, Jay and Haley, they had read the book or listened to the audiobook and were just very effusive with their praise for it. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of itching to read something. Let me go get this book. And I picked it up and checked it out. And I did that before. I'd never read, that was the first thing I'd read by Andy Weir. I'd seen The Martian, but never read The Martian. So I read Project Hail Mary first, and I enjoyed it so much that I went and picked up The Martian, and I'll save some of those thoughts. But I think what I can say very positively about Project Hail Mary is that Andy Weir just evolved like leaps and bounds as a writer from The Martian to Project Hail Mary.
Interesting.
Any thoughts, Jordan?
I struggled with the audiobook at first. I was like texting these guys and I was like, I don't really like the voice. Like, there's so much science. Like, I am not into this. But I was like, hey, I got to power through. Like, it's literally my job now. And then by the end of it, I was crying. Like, my husband kept turning around and looking at me like, are you okay? Because I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe Rocky just said that. Like, and it has now taken over my whole algorithm on Instagram. Like, I am obsessed and I love this book and this story and this film, especially. I think we'll obviously get into it, but I think it was a great adaptation and it made it really approachable. If you hadn't read the book, it was still easy enough to follow. So I love it now, and I'll probably will also go back and read The Martian and Artemis, the other book by Andy Weir at Chris's recommendation. So
Okay.
I guess Andy Weir has gained a fan over here.
I'm sure that's quite a few of them around. The Martian, I watched the film and then I read the book, and it's a very good adaptation as well. A pretty strong, pretty closely adapted book, and I think it was even adapted before it was really a big thing. He put it out as like a self-published book at the time, and then they picked it up for the movie, and that's when he actually did all the publishing of it, if I remember right. But it's definitely been an interesting journey for them. Anyways, so cultural impact wise, this book, this book and film, as Sarah Day mentioned, really did kind of bring some of the hard science back into the mainstream, and it kind of gave us some of that fantasy with the alien, but with a very grounded approach to it, which I really enjoyed. Um, the let's see, kind of what am I looking at here? Sorry. I think that the non-hostile first contact stories were one of the best things in the early, 80s films and stuff like that, with ET and stuff like that. And then we got away from the friendliness of aliens. And so I'm kind of glad to see we've got this awesome alien character back. I think we've seen it in animation a few times, but I'm excited to see how people portray that going forward. Any ideas? Any thoughts on that, guys?
I don't want to get too into like the plot of it, but it was really interesting. And I don't know that they talked about it in the movie, but in the book, they make it clear that the reason why they met was because their species are similar intelligent levels. So
Hmm.
any species that are more intelligent, they've already figured out astrophage. Any species that were less intelligent probably died. So that's why they're meeting in space, because their intelligent level is the same. And I think that was really interesting to make it, anti, making it a nice alien interaction, because to Rocky, um, Grace is a alien,
Mhm.
Hmm.
so they're both there for the same reason. They're both lost in space. Their crew has died. So, it's the way he made it um a positive interaction was really fascinating, as opposed to, aliens coming to Earth and attacking.
Definitely. And I mean, this story could have absolutely gone that way if everybody's fighting for the, remaining whatever they have to do to stop this, or wanting the resources from the different suns. You could have had a story of a hostile
Mhm.
alien trying to steal everybody else's sun energy that was left or something. So
Oh,
it was a fun, friendly alien story that way, I think.
yeah. I think it goes to like the broader themes that Andy Weir brings to the book of like collectivism and teamwork and like working together to find a solution instead of like finger pointing and blaming each other and like getting into fights about it, because we see on earth how the entire world, like every country, is sending their best scientists to work together to figure this out. So with that spirit of what Project Hail Mary represents just on our planet, it makes a lot of sense that when you're in space and you have the opportunity to work together with somebody else for the same purpose, that Grace and whoever else was on the team, if they had survived, would have also had that kind of frame of mind of like, well, they must be here, like you said, like they must be here for the same reason. Let's figure out how to work together and help each other. And I think that spirit of, supporting and that like hope core energy carries throughout the whole book.
Yeah, there are definitely a few themes that this story shares with the Martian, not only just like an individual kind of being stranded with insurmountable odds, kind of having to rise to the occasion and use all their faculties to survive. But yeah, that's an interesting point about how optimistic this story is, and that really does kind of set it apart from a lot of sci-fi, because it does bring to mind a lot of science fiction stories and depictions of the future. They can tend to be pretty pessimistic, and yeah, I think between The Martian and now this, I did like the point about the Astrophage, even though they are like non sentient, they do kind of satisfy a little bit of that itch where it's like, hey, if we did come into contact with outside life, there would probably be risks and ramifications that we couldn't account for. And I do think the book is really intentional about that, especially when it comes to the way that Rocky and Grace have to interact, like all the things that they have physically keeping them apart, they don't let that keep them from forming this bond and coming up with this solution, which is really inspiring. And yeah, I've been on other podcasts where I've described not only the book but the movie kind of like a best hits when it comes to sci-fi, because I do think it's taking a lot of influences, not only from some of those darker sci-fi stories like Alien or 2001: A Space Odyssey, but definitely, I mean, the ET is right there. The fact that it is a friendly puppet character that you just fall in love with. I really like that and really appreciate that.
Definitely. And of course, the collaboration on Earth is the fantasy part of the series we get here. That's total fiction. So
Yeah, true that.
it kind of goes back to
Unfortunately.
the space race and the fact that a lot of us were, a lot of the countries were competing, but also kind of working together, trying to push us all to space together. We were working towards things that as a collaboration to try and further the mankind, and then that kind of has gone away from that sense. But
I
I
do
think that was
like that Strat, though, makes it clear if this doesn't work, they aren't going to share resources. There will be wars. Like,
right.
she is
That's
very
phenomenal.
realistic
Yeah.
in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of went through them already. The key themes of, the sacrificing for humanity. The team did not think they were coming back, but they were all willing to go out there and try to find a solution for our world and for other worlds. They, curiosity over fears, in there of that. Grace had to overcome his fear and running away from Rocky's ship a little bit, and finally learn to play catch with his puppet friend. And collaboration towards that progress you guys were talking about already. And so we saw that both the Earth collaboration and the collaboration with Rocky's uh, type of the way he was working and trying to figure out how to work together is all throughout this film.
Yeah.
So we can get
100%.
into the characters here and kind of talk about or let's talk about we all I think have already talked about how we thought this was a great adaptation. Any specifics you guys want to go into about how the adaptation went? We can go into it as we go through the items too, the parts of the book. But if anybody has
J,
any,
J Scotty, go ahead and say if you have any thoughts.
Well, is this where we'd be talking about like major differences between the two, or are we saving that kind of stuff for later on? Because I don't want to get too
more
far ahead of
generalized at
myself.
this point, we are going to go through the different parts of the book, the different
Okay.
segments, and talk about that if you want to do it then.
Yeah, no, I'll save some of my specific thoughts for that section, but I will say the thing that I've been singing the praises of this movie about is how faithful an adaptation it is. It is very, very faithful. Like I've joined you all to talk about the Hunger Games books and movies, and that's another instance where it's very, very faithful. But I think I would argue that this one takes it to the next degree. There's like one major plot point change, but other than that, I think all the changes that they make benefit this adaptation and the visual format and just seeing it on the biggest screen possible. So it is a little bit of an instance where like we know that Ryan Gosling had his hands on this thing before it was even released to the public, and it was a well-oiled machine in terms of like, hey, we know we've got a good story here. Let's do everything we can to get it made at the highest level. So for those reasons, I think they were absolutely set up for a big win. Ryan Gosling is perfect, and everybody working, in front of and behind the camera, or they're bringing their A game. So if you can't tell, I really liked it.
I think we all really liked it. I mean, I was lucky enough to see it on an IMAX screen, and it was just so visually stunning. Like some of the still shots are gonna stick with me for a while. Like this puppetry and CGI of Rocky being brought to life, like he's a rock, but he's so cute. Like I just love him so much. And yeah, like you said, Jay Scotty, it is really faithful. There's some things that got taken out or wiggled around a little bit, which we'll talk about, but it was really faithfully adapted. And so I think it's really satisfying for people who read the book and have loved the book for the last few years that it's been out. It's really satisfying for them, and if you're new to it, you can still have fun. And so it was great.
I think Rocky, I don't want to get into our like bookmark moments too soon, but like Rocky was great. He was exactly how I pictured him in the book. Like they do describe him spider like, and I didn't see an actual spider. I did see a rock with multiple legs. Like he was perfectly brought to life on screen.
Yeah, that was pretty great. I was gonna say. My one regret is that I didn't get to see it on a bigger screen. Went to a more local theater here, and it was a smaller screen. I kind of wish I'd gotten into an IMAX, but it was still stunning on even any theater screen I feel like is worth it for this one, but
You
I'm
know,
gonna have to
my
go again.
husband doesn't like to go to the movies right now because we have 2 kids. So if we go to the movies together, we have to get a babysitter, you know, all of that jazz. So it makes it like 3 times as expensive to go to the movies. So he still hasn't seen it. He's read the book because I made him because I knew he would like it. And I'm like, I wish we could figure out a way to get you to the big screen because this is definitely a movie. Like if you're listening to this and it's still in theaters, please go see it in theaters. You have to see it on a big screen
Yes.
because it is stunning.
Yes.
Totally.
100% agree. Agree.
Amaze. All right. Let's go through these characters and how we thought the adaptation was of their performance and appearance and whatnot. We got obviously Ryan Gosling as Ryland Grace, and it sounds like Scotty's a big fan of that,
Oh, it was meant to be. They got the same initials, RG.
right?
Yeah.
He was
I
probably
didn't
written
even
for him in
notice
the first
that.
place.
Wow.
Yeah. Has Ryan Gosling had other performances or other characters that maybe resonate with me on a personal level a little bit more? I would argue maybe so, but I will say like this feels like a culmination of his career and everything he's been doing, from the comedy chops to the more dramatic flair, to just being so lovable and charming. Like he can do no wrong. Like he really is like a golden retriever, just in human form. And yeah, so I think that was the big difference between Mark Watney and Ryland Grace. Mark Watney from the Martian and Ryland Grace. Like Mark Watney was a scientist, and was even though it was a very positive story and he was very resilient, he had a tendency to be in a very negative headspace, wasn't afraid to cuss a lot. And Ryland Grace is a middle school teacher. So again, Ryan Gosling was perfect to bring that energy, to put a smile on your face, but also bring a tear to your eye and make you chuckle throughout, even if it's just the physical humor. Like in the first 5 minutes, you see him waking up and screaming and flopping around, and like my theater was in stitches. So he's
Yep.
perfect, pitch perfect.
Yeah. I think he really nailed like the vastness of the human experience, like the grief of his teammates dying in their comas on the way there. I was crying with him as he was sending them off into, giving them their space bon voyage, their final exit. And then when he's quipping and like saying fudge because he works with kids, like I work with kids, I say fudge. Like I'm like, oh, he gets it. Like he's a teacher, he gets it. Like he just, when he was crying, he sold it and I was crying with him. And then when he was funny, I was dying laughing. He was hilarious. And I just think like if Ryan Gosling's ever going to win an award for acting, this is going to be it. Hopefully there's more down the line, but based on everything we've seen, like this is it for him. This is his like swan song. And he was just fabulous from beginning to end.
I've been a Ryan Gosling fan ever since The Notebook, of course.
Oh yeah.
And then when Barbie came out, fell in love with him all over again. He was perfect as Ken. And it's funny because when he was cast as Ken, I questioned it. But he was perfect. And then I knew about him and this film before I read the book. And as I was reading the book, I was like, he doesn't, like, I don't see Ryan Gosling being this character, but seeing him in the movie, perfect. He just was perfect. He was so charming, so endearing, really sold the relationship with Rocky. And I honestly couldn't imagine anyone else in the role.
Well, that's because he had practice, with Emma Stone first. Next, she's got to go be on screen with The Rock next, I think, right?
Yeah, for the trifecta.
Progression. Yeah, I saw some memes about that. That was pretty funny. All right, so then Rocky was portrayed by James Ortiz. He was also the primary, the head puppeteer. I think there was like a team of like 10 people that were puppeting him, but James was there, the head of it, and they chose his voice because he was just matched the energy just right, and the team found him to be so charming they threw him into that role. And I think I think it was a great choice. I think the voice is definitely a good call, although as they said in the film, Meryl Streep can't do anything wrong, but that was a fun little Easter egg.
Yeah.
That was a really fun part, and I don't know if we'll to it in the next episode or not, but I do really like how they handled the communication between Rocky and Grace in the movie, and how, how they brought that from page to screen, because it was fun, it was comedic, the Easter egg with Meryl Streep, and um making it like, I was wondering how they were going to portray that, and I think they did a really great job.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to shout out to James Ortiz. I think puppetry is like a dying art in Hollywood. Like so much of it just is CGI, and so for them to make the choice to use puppetry and then to give one of the puppeteers the opportunity to get that like recognition of being the voice of Rocky too, I think is really special. And like we all agree, like he absolutely nailed it. Like Rocky's voice is, to me, like very iconic now. Like I am gonna be saying amaze, amaze, amaze like for the rest of my life. And I'm gonna hear James Ortiz's voice in my head every time I think of this film and of Rocky. So really, really excellent job for portraying this character, physically and vocally.
Yeah, and it's stories like that. The fact that they had a physical puppet on set and had a puppeteer available to do the improvisation with Ryan Gosling. Because again, just to hop back to him for a second, the fact that like he does so much heavy lifting in this movie. Like I can think of few movies that where a character appears in every single scene, or there's not a second of screen time that he's not on, and that's just such a big ask. And so much of that is just Ryan Gosling. Like on any other set, he'd just be talking to a camera or a tennis ball, but they had someone on set. And the fact that they took an unknown, like I'm sure James Ortiz is very well known within his circles and as a expert in his field, but as far as being a household name, no. But now that he gets that opportunity, those are those stories that just give me the sense that the spirit of collaboration that is so throughout this story, like it feels like that translated to the set of this movie, which I just love to see, and agree with everything that's been said about the character of Rocky and his portrayal. But to hone in on James Ortiz's voice for just a second, this is kind of a thought that I have not had previously, maybe just somewhere in the very back of my mind. But again, with the comparison to ET, I think he may have been going for like a little bit of an homage to ET, because it has like that quality where it's a little otherworldly and cracks a little bit, like I am Rocky, like maybe Elliot, or I don't, maybe that's just
I
me.
can see that. Yeah.
Okay.
I hear it. Now that you mention it, I'll have to watch it again and be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I have to go back and see it again in the
I guess.
theaters.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible.
All right. Next up is Eva Strott. She's the woman in charge of everything, the across all the Project Hail Mary stuff across the world, played by Sandra Hüller. Um, I thought she really portrayed the character from the book like spot on. I was like, oh wow, this woman definitely is in charge. All right.
Yeah,
I
this is
love her.
another. Okay.
No, go ahead.
This is another example of just excellent casting. I was familiar with Sandra Hüller before this movie because she's popped up in a few like Oscar contenders. Like Anatomy of a Fall was the first thing I saw her in, where she did a really good job of portraying like a person that you don't know how to feel about. Like in one instance, you may be on her side. In other instances, you may be very suspicious of her and her intentions and what she's capable of. And I think that is basically who Eva Stratt is. So in addition to that, she was in a movie called The Zone of Interest where she portrayed a Nazi. Obviously not a good character, a very evil character, but again, the way that film played out, you got to see, not to justify it or any of her actions, but it shows a little bit more nuance to how a person could get to that point or think that those kind of things are acceptable. So yeah, I'm really excited to see her make the transition to a big film like this, where she will probably become more of a household name to casual audiences. But yeah, she's great, and the fact that she did have so much chemistry with Ryan Gosling, I feel like in the book there were a couple of things that pointed to maybe some chemistry in their relationship, but just that one sequence where they're on their top side on the aircraft carrier, just having that moment, just the chemistry between them is electric, and I think both of them were bringing so much to the table in that moment.
Yeah. They changed her character a little bit, in my opinion, between the book and the movie. I think in the movie they gave her a lot more humanity. They have that scene on the top of the carrier with Dr. Grace, and they get to have that like very human moment. And then she goes in and she does the karaoke song to the Harry Styles, which like didn't happen in the book at all.
Right.
And I think that humanized her a little bit more. And so then when, you know, she has the turnaround later of like, you're going on this mission, buddy, whether you like it or not, it, you know, you understand, like you said, it gives that nuance and you understand where she's coming from a little bit more, versus in the book, like it can be seen, because you don't have those human interactions, it can be, it, you know, it can read very, very harsh and like, oh my gosh, like she's crazy, like she's, you know, I didn't feel that way. I was like, we got to save the world, so like you don't have time, we don't have time for you to be a coward, sorry bud, like we have to save the world. And it, you know, they, one of the things they took out, sorry to get ahead a little bit, is the coma gene. They didn't really explain that in the movie, but in the book there's a gene where you're more likely to survive a long-term coma, and Ryland Grace has that gene. So it's not just that he's been in part of this project from the beginning. He literally is one of, I think they said like one in 7,000 people who has this gene. Like it literally can only be him going on this mission. And he, you know, he admits to himself in the book, I'm a coward, I don't want to do this. And she's like, too bad. We are trying to save humanity. You have got to go. And I really like admire that quality in the character, that she is very mission oriented and doesn't care about what people think of her and how she, you know, comes across. If she's too harsh or whatever, she does not care. She's on a mission. And I think that Sandra Hüller did a great job of portraying that side of her and then adding that humanity in the film. She did a great job of bringing that human part to life as well.
I agree with everything that you guys have said, that she really added a lot of nuance and humanity to the character, because I definitely thought the character in the book was a lot more just like to the point, not aggressive, but unemotional.
Militant.
Yes, militant, unemotional. The court scene in particular is something that wasn't in the film, where you get to see like she's like, this is a waste of time. I don't need to be here, you know, blah blah blah. But I feel like in the film, especially when they're in her office and she's like, he says, I'm not going, and she's like, yeah, you are. They made it a little bit more comedic in the film with him like running away, but you could see that emotion I felt in her performance. Like, I don't want to do this to you. I do like you, but like you said, we're saving the world, so you've got to go. So I really appreciated her performance.
Yeah,
Definitely. Next three aren't really that big of characters in the movie here, as far as we don't see a lot from them. But we got Commander Yao Li Jai, played by Ken Long. We got Aaliyah. I'm gonna try the engineer.
Olesia
Ilyukna.
Yeah,
Ilyukna.
Yeah.
she's played by Milena Weintraub, which I do know her from, like, she was the AT&T girl and a couple other, you know, she was actually supposed to be Squirrel Girl at one point, a couple other, I think she is the voice in Marvel Rivals, so I do know her from a few things, and I feel like I barely even saw her in the film, just kind of a glance here and there. Like, that's a big role for her, a big name for a small role. And then we had Dr. DeBose, played by Malachi Kirby, the lead scientist before the accident happens.
I do want to note real quick that they just released that like the original cut was like 4 hours, so they might have had more for these characters in the original film that was cut out.
I'm begging you, release the director's cut.
Yeah.
Please.
Absolutely,
Please.
no.
I would totally sit through that on an IMAX screen. Please. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of screen time for these characters. The three of them, the original members of Project Hail Mary. You alluded to the accident where Dr. Dubois is killed, and that's what opens up the spot for Dr. Grace to go. But they hit their characters pretty spot on, I think. Ilyukna is a Russian who's a big fan of vodka, and that comes into play in the movie. And Yao he's the leader, he's the commander, and he, like, the Ken Leung gives that presence of like, yeah, that's a man who's in charge. He knows what he's doing. He's very sure of himself. So I think all of them were good.
Yeah, you definitely get a lot more time to get to know them a little bit better in the book, but thinking back on the purpose that they serve in the book is, yeah, while you do get more interactions with them by way of flashback and getting to dwell on those interactions, really it is all to service their impact on Grace. So
Yeah.
for that reason, I think they serve their purpose in the movie pretty
Mhm.
well. It's not really about them so much as it is the circumstances that they're put into and how that puts Grace into the situation that he is, and what little vestiges they left behind that he can utilize. So yeah, in the case of Ilyukina, it's her vodka and just kind of that, like, if we're going to be out here, at least we can do something to take the edge off and have a little bit of fun and keep it light and bright. But Yao in particular, I think he, even though there was more in the book, I think he is kind of the one that, like, he works a little bit better for me in the movie, and I think that may be by way of they aged the character up a little bit. And you already referenced the lack of the gene in the movie adaptation, but I felt like I really appreciated the sequence where he got to tell Grace, like, hey, it's not about a gene, it's about having someone to be brave for. And I just thought that was one of the best through lines throughout the movie that may, in my opinion, work better in the movie than it does in the book, because the book just has so much going on. So yeah, they serve their purpose. Dubois, nice to see him, but his partner that you just see in the karaoke sequence, like, Grace gives him that, like, knowing glance, like, oh, I see what you two are up to. She doesn't even get a line of dialogue in this movie, where she's like, at least has a couple of lines in the book. So yeah, they serve their role. So I can't have too many qualms there. But yeah, if we do ever get that 4-hour cut and get to spend more time with them, I'm totally open to it.
Yep, I'm in. Next up is Carl. He was kind of a standout, I feel like. He played by Lionel Boyce, and he's kind of Grace's buddy on Earth when they start going through and testing out the first few things. The CIA officer that ends up helping him out with those first few experiments. I really liked the way he played that role.
Yeah, me and my husband were so excited. We're like, it's Marcus from The Bear. Like, we were so pumped to
Yeah,
see him
yeah.
when he first came on screen. And I think it's a new character from the book, or
I think so
if the
too.
character's
Yeah.
in the book, it's not nearly as prominent. But I love the dynamic between Lionel and Ryan Gosling. Like, they just had such fun, like, bro energy, and like they're eating the candy together and they're going to Home Depot and like put it on the government's tab. Like, it's just, they were a
All
lot
of
of
them.
fun, and like, this is a literal life and death mission to save the whole planet and all, billions of people that live here, and having somebody to joke around with and bring some levity to, I think was really valuable to the film. And I love to see Lionel Boyce getting a big screen role, and he deserves more of them in the future for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you really encapsulated the benefits to his character, from the comedic relief to just the levity and the way the pacing of the movie picks up at that point in time. And I can't help but think about when Grace kind of radios into him from the lab, like, do we have an expense account? No,
No.
but I do. And that just, you can't kind of see the light bulb go off, and just the energy picks up from there. So what I kind of realized after the fact is, and he's one of my favorite characters in additions to the movie from the book, because yeah, I read the book back in mid to late January. I don't remember a Carl, but maybe he had a page or two dedicated to him. But what he really accomplishes for this movie, um, he kind of sets up. He's kind of the proto Rocky. He kind of shows you that, hey, Grace, wherever he goes, he has this ability to befriend and engender people and work together with people, even if they seem a little standoffish at first. So I really liked his inclusion. And when you do get the betrayal, it hurts that much more that he's like, Carl, don't let him do this to me, Carl. And yeah, not even Carl can help you.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Maybe that comes from being a middle school teacher. You just make friends everywhere because you can deal with middle schoolers.
That's
It is a superpower.
right.
Anything to add, Sarah? Did you already talk about him?
I mean, a really good call about him being able to make friends with anybody. I like that nugget. That's not something I thought about. You guys said everything else about that character, though. I'm really glad they had it added. It added some good comedic relief to the film, added to the montage, if you will. It kind of helped with that, all the science of it.
Definitely. And then last character I have down here of our main cast, even though it's not a huge role, is Mary, the Hail Mary ship, played by Priya Kansara. And I thought that was just a fun little, you know, someone I kind of recognize the name. Like, I think, was she the one that was in our last one in His and Hers as one? Was it the same name, or am I wrong
One of
about
the
that?
characters is named Priya.
Is not the same. Oh, that's right. My brain was connecting those two. Then never mind. But I thought the voice was good, and I thought that it was kind of fun that the ship was talking to him and had a little bit of personality too.
I feel like you can do kind of a 2-for-1 when it comes to Mary and throw Armando in here as well, because you had a lot of,
Oh, right.
Grace's observations and interactions with the surgical or medical aid arms that help facilitate his survival through the coma. But yeah, it was nice to see that play out in live action. Very reminded me a lot of Iron Man and Dummy. So
Yeah,
good
Butterfingers, and
stuff.
My
I
boy.
have two 3D printers here, and I've named them Butterfingers and Dummy in their
Nice.
software.
Perfect.
All right. Anything else on characters that I missed? Anything you guys can think of?
I'll just hop back to Strat for just a second, because I'm not sure if I'll get an opportunity to bring it up elsewhere. But I think one of the things that really makes her work as well in her interactions with Grace, because we sung the praises of Ryan Gosling so much and how funny he is, but I think it's her acting as a straight man to his comedy that makes it
Mhm.
work so much. Because I think about the first time they even meet each other, and it's like, knock knock, who's there? I don't
Don't do
tell
jokes.
don't tell I don't do jokes. I don't do jokes who. And then
Mhm.
she's holding the bean bag, like the earth bean bag, and he's like, that's lava. And she's just like, it's not. It's so good. It's so
I was
good.
laughing
Yes.
so hard. Nobody else was, but I was cracking up in my theater. Okay.
Yeah, their dynamic is really nice, and I'm itching to go see it again. I hope I can make it happen before it's streaming. But all those little nuances are like things that like get lost when you're thinking back on it,
Hmm.
with only having it seen one time. So hopefully I can get back to the big screen. But I cannot wait. This is going to be probably one of my comfort movies when it comes out, and this is definitely going to be like Ready Player One is another one that I read almost every year. This is
Oh,
definitely going to
nice.
be another one that I read annually. It's just so good.
That's actually, I kind of was thinking about doing another read through just to, refresh myself, but also just because I wanted to. And I did just read through Ready Player One again, just because I needed something comforting. So I'm with you there. Um, all right. So the other thing we were going to talk about at the beginning, or in the first episode here, was the locations. There's some key locations that we wanted to bring up. I'm going to go through them, and then we can kind of go back, and if there's anything specific we want to say about them.
Yeah,
We
I
got
just want to
obviously.
note that we added that. I brought it up to you guys because we don't normally do like the locations when we're talking about adaptation, but we talked about it earlier. This movie is so beautiful that I thought it was really relevant to talk about how they brought each of these settings to life on the big
Mhm,
screen because it's just so beautiful. And I think it needed its own spotlight.
Mhm.
definitely. I threw Earth in there just because it is one of the locations. It has the classroom and the NASA lab, which and obviously the aircraft carrier and all that stuff. The ship, the Hail Mary, Blip A of Rocky's ship, Tau Ceti and Tau Ceti E, the planet and star, and then Irid in the end. I may have missed one or two in there if you guys have any other ones, but anything you want to bring up specifically about any of those? Uh,
Talseti and Talseti E are just so gorgeous, so stunning. Like the green and red, and just the way that they came together, like that CGI of that was just so beautiful. And you know, I'm not necessarily a big like space person. Like I'm not somebody who's going up and gazing at the stars and like questioning my existence. But this movie and those visuals did kind of make me like, we live in a beautiful universe. Like, and even Earth, like we joke, like, it's just Earth, but like there's so much beauty in Earth. And I think that's something that this movie brought to life, is like Earth is worth saving and people are worth saving, and we are so fortunate to even exist. Like the amount of like opportunity that we had to evolve differently and turn out like Rocky or turn out like Astrophage, like, and yet here we are as humans, and we get to sit and have computers and cameras and talk on a podcast, and podcasts exist. Like the
The important things
like
in life.
right, like the statistics of this, of us all existing in this moment in time together, are so astronomically small that that in and of itself is beautiful. And this movie is just like a testament to the beauty of humanity and love and hope and just everything. And then it all kind of came together in these images of these other planets and stars, and it's just, the whole thing is just visually very, very stunning all the way through.
It's
And you
funny
said you
how
weren't.
the bigness of space makes you think so much about the small things in life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and you said you're not the kind of person that looks up to the stars and contemplates your existence, and then you wax and wane on the
Poetic.
astronomical odds of like us all being here right now. That's really poignant and beautiful, and I'm glad you said that before I had the chance to chime in, because I was gonna say like Earth's Earth. We've seen Earth a million times. Like they got Earth, they nailed Earth. But we can appreciate that, but to be a little more uh, uh, eloquent about it and actually talk about a little bit of what they do offer in the movie. I think they did do a pretty good job of setting it in a. It didn't feel like today. It felt like maybe 5-10 years in the future, so not so far removed that it couldn't be feasible, but just, and that's kind of a difficult thing to do, to make it feel like in the future but not so so far removed. So I did appreciate that aspect of it. Thinking about the Earth-based locations, we didn't really get. They didn't hang a lantern on it, but I think uh, you could argue that maybe it was seen, but there was the whole storyline about having to uh, replace like the Sahara desert with like solar panels. And there is the sequence where Strat and Grace are having the conversation before the explosion goes off, but that looked like a much colder environment to me based on the way they were dressed. So I was thinking maybe Siberia or something. I couldn't remember exactly where they were in the book at that point in time, but I thought that took place in the Sahara. So we didn't get that, but the sets that they did use felt very grounded and real. Didn't feel like we were on a green screen or anything like that. But I feel like the big one we have to talk about is Rocky's ship, because we
Mhm.
never really get to see that in the book. And they describe it, and they describe it as like thin metal plates being like stretched out along each other, and depending on the angle you can see different things. But just that sequence where he's like, yeah, it would be pretty cool to get to see your ship, and then he finally does get aboard, and it's basically, it looks like string theory come to life to me. You've just got these rods of gold that shimmer and are iridescent, and it's like almost like he can play guitar on them. Like, oh, just visual splendor.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of interstellar vibes, those
Oh
that
yeah,
they used to
definitely,
in the
definitely.
travel through the, but
Well, and Tau Ceti as well, or they end up they name it Adrian, right? Because it's Tau
Mhm.
is
Ceti
the planet
E
name in the end. Yeah.
originally, and it's like, hey, that's, we can come up with something better than that. And I love the exchange that Grace is like, hey, you got to see this, you got to look at this, you got to see this, and Rocky's like, I see it, it's boring. there's
Right.
Right.
there's nothing there. And that's like, that is one of the sequences in the movie where I think Grace even says it, like, I'm just having a moment, I just want to take this in
Yes.
and have a moment. And he turns on the
Yeah.
infrared like UV display, and you just watch all the astrophage. Like, oh, that's
Mhm.
that's that's where it gets transcendent for me. I'm getting goosebumps
Yeah.
again because it's beautiful.
Yes. See, I was getting a little emotional when Jordan was talking about not looking up at the stars, because I do like that's one of the reasons why I love and wanted to move where I currently live, because we don't have a lot of city light, so we can look up at the
Hmm.
sky and just see everything. And I'll go out into my backyard and I'll look up, and then I do love thinking about space, and I do get overwhelmed because I'm like, oh my gosh, like where does it end? How does it end? You can
Sure.
go off on a tangent. Um, but thinking about like even our planets and the new images that they just released and how gorgeous those are, like in our own solar system. So to see Adrian and like just like it fill up your entire screen, and him just floating there and saying he's having a moment, and like the music is beautiful, and like you're like, yeah, you could really understand what he's feeling in that moment because it's just gorgeous. They did a wonderful job bringing that planet to life. And then when they flip the switch and they go fishing, and it's that they're in the red line, and like I don't know how they filmed that, but it was incredible. And again, like he's doing the flips, and like it's just, that whole sequence was just amazing. Like this, if anything, they need to win cinematography or something for this freaking movie because they did a really great job.
They did.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, thinking about the way that Rocky doesn't have eyes to see things the same way we do is also a very interesting part about that whole thing of like he's
Exactly.
the moment and him having to be like, yeah, it's I can see what I can see of it, but there's nothing there to see. I don't know what you're talking about. So us being able to see with our eyes and enjoy
See
these
color.
things is a pretty amazing thing in itself that you kind of have to appreciate after seeing a being that doesn't have that ability.
Yeah, he's like, it's medium rough planet. And it's like,
Yeah.
because he can't see color. And it's like, no, it's like actually the most stunning, beautiful visual I've ever seen in my life. That's actually what it is. But sure, medium rough planet is fine. Let's go with green instead. We'll meet in the middle.
Wonder, like, I wish we got more time on Arid because it's like, what do you think is beautiful? Like, what is beautiful to somebody that doesn't have color and just has like shapes and volume?
Well, in the book, it talks about how it's dark. It's just black on that planet because they don't need light to see. Right. Light doesn't reach. And so there's, that is a good question of like, what does art look like on that planet if it's not visual?
I think you get a little bit of a sense because he wears the ceremonial garb. It's in the book and the movie when they're celebrating, and he's like, these little things that kind of protrude and shimmer and make noise as he shakes them and jostles them. Like that makes sense to me. Those are the things that they would find stimulating.
Yeah. Oh, and he did say, so it's like sounds are beautiful to them because he did say his wife's name was beautiful, or his mate, I'm sorry, his mate's name is beautiful. And it was long, and like they did a really good job in the film portraying that name as well, because you did feel like it was a pretty name in that language.
Right up until the end.
Yeah, if you
ends with like
that's a little bit of a weird.
Yes. So yeah, if you can't see, I guess sound is what is like, I mean, and music does make me emotional, so I get it. I can see how sounds can have that feeling.
That would have been an interesting thing to see. It would have been like if Grace was a musician or something and had a little bit of a like played a guitar or something
that
for
would have
him,
been great.
An interaction with music would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
But maybe in the sequel.
Yes.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Any other major location things you guys wanted to discuss? Yeah, you're right at the end was really pretty cool to see that moment. We'll get into that in the epilogue if nothing else there, but.
Well, I guess just to talk about the Hail Mary ship a little bit, in the book, and it just shows what painstaking accuracy Andy Weir goes to, but you actually get a diagram of the Hail Mary and get to see how it works with the centrifuge and everything like that. In the movie, you have a whole new room. There's this like mental health room where it visually displays like with screens. It's in the movie, it functions as the way to help Rocky and Grace bond, and he gets to show him Earth that way. And I can't remember who said it, but Earth is a place worth saving, and you get to have that moment where Rocky says like, I like Earth, like Earth seems cool. So I thought that was another. What's that?
He gets to meet Rocky the movie too, and like
exactly, yeah, and go deep sea fishing and all that. So that was one of the big changes that I thought worked, and it makes a ton of sense if you're going to be out in space for that long. It would make sense to have some kind of sensory escape like that.
And it was actually a red herring in the trailer because you see a moment of him on the beach crying, and I turned to Matthew and I was like, oh, that's at the end when he realizes the sun is fixed and he's crying. Come to find out it was in the ship the whole time, and he had some sort of realization and he was having his moment, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not even like, they totally threw me off in the trailer.
And they took that moment out, and I actually didn't like that they took that moment out. I thought
they changed it a little bit, and I'm sure we'll get into that in the next episode because I have thoughts on that too.
Okay, well, let's wrap up this episode then we'll move on to part 2 next week.
Bye.
All right, I'm rubbing my
Bye.
forearm in the Eridani way.
Yep. Goodbye.
That's a wrap for today's episode of BookWatch. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the world of page-to-screen adaptations. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share it with your fellow book and movie lovers. If you'd prefer to watch along, you can check the show out on YouTube. You can follow the show on Instagram at BookWatch Podcast, and you can follow me, Sarah Day, on Instagram at captain.mcdee. That's MCDEE. You can also join the conversation in the BookWatch Lounge on Facebook at www.facebook.com/groups/BookWatchLounge. If you would like to support the podcast, you can join the Patreon at www.patreon.com/BookWatchPodcast. Tiers start at only $4 a month, and I'd love to have you over there. If you have a favorite adaptation you'd like to cover with me, I'd love for you to apply to be on the show with the contact form on our website at www.bookwatchpodcast.com. Until next time, keep reading, keep watching, and I'll see you next week.